Hello, and welcome to Copenhagen. Welcome to WDBE 2021, to this intermission session. Thank you for using your break with us here in Copenhagen. We've been looking forward to it. And welcome to BLOXHUB. My name is Jakob Norman Hansen. I'm the head of global networks in BLOXHUB, and we're here with my colleague Christina. BLOXHUB is it's a co-working space in Copenhagen. It's also a membership organization based on triple helix collaboration, and we also represent a global network within sustainable urbanization. Our main focus today is on the digital sensors and construction. And what we do here in BLOXHUB is we want to try to break down the silos and provide a platform for collaboration. And also for innovation across boundaries. And this is why we think this is a very interesting topic for us. It's also something that can make us achieve our target of becoming more sustainable and doing city development in a more sustainable way. We represent a number of activities here in BLOXHUB. One of them is called Tech Match, which matches up Danish SMEs together with European startups to give them a technology boost and develop their innovation, and you will hear a lot more about this in a little while. But first I will give the word to Christina.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Christina Haptoft, and I'm part of the Danish ContechLab. ContechLab is a collaboration between the two big Danish foundations, Realdania and the Industry Foundation, and the Danish Construction Information Center, Molio. In our pioneer projects, as we call them in ContechLab, we work with the interfaces and the collaboration between the companies across the value chain. And we do it together with the great initiatives representing the industry, like we're standing here with BLOXHUB today. In ContechLab, we believe that we need to speed up the implementation of existing solutions. And that's also what we're going to discuss or debate here today, how we can accelerate the use of digital sensors on the construction side. Before introducing our wonderful panelists, I would like to show you a short video trailer from one of our latest pioneer projects. Please bear with us. The video isn't Danish, but it has English subtitles. Here goes.
I det her pionerprojekt, der har vi kigget på brugen af sensorer på byggepladsen. ContechLab er byggebranchens fælles udviklingsplatform, hvor byggeriets virksomheder sammen kan udvikle og eksperimentere med nye måder at bruge data, digitalisering og ny teknologi på. Formålet er at skabe en fremtidssikret byggebranche med øget bæredygtighed og produktivitet. Det er sådan på byggepladsen, som vi kender den i dag, der er det utrolig svært at få overblik over strømforbruget, hvem der forbruger hvor meget strøm og hvordan og hvorledes. Og det er det, vi tager under lup i det her projekt. Og vi ønsker, at al den viden, vi finder frem til i pionerprojektet, bliver delt med hele branchen og kan komme hele branchen til gode.
Hvis man skærer det helt ind til benet, så er en sensor jo faktisk bare en enhed, som måler på et parameter. Og det kan være temperatur, eller luftfugtighed, eller strøm, for eksempel som i det her projekt. Og der, hvor det går hen og bliver smart, det er, når vi forbinder det til internettet. Og det er også det, som vi kender som IoT.
Det kan godt være, at det ser en lille smule rodet ud med alle ledningerne, men den er faktisk en del pænere end vores første version.
Det vi har opnået på vores pionerprojekt er, at vi har udviklet en strømmåler, der kan bruges fleksibelt på byggepladsen. Vi har også lavet en prototype på dashboard, der skal formidle de her data til byggeprojektets projektledere. Det vi har lært på pionerprojektet er, at når vi sætter teknologi op på en byggeplads, så kommer det sjældent til at gå sådan, som man regner med det. Vi i ContechLab vil rigtig gerne fortsætte arbejdet med at løfte byggepladsernes bæredygtighed gennem teknologi. Og vi vil gerne sammen med jer definere, hvad den bæredygtige byggeplads er i fremtiden.
Hello again. Sorry, we were about to show you the long version of the movie of 12 minutes, so we just replaced it with the trailer instead. But you can watch the whole video on the ContechLab at the event. Now I would like to introduce our panel. We're very happy and excited to have you all with us today. And with us we have Kasper Bernhov Harlev, co-founder of SensoHive. SensoHive was actually our main partner on this project we just showed you the video about. We also have Lars Andersen, development manager in IoT at NCC. NCC is probably one of the front runners in collecting data at the construction site in Denmark. So we're excited to hear your perspectives today.
Thank you.
Lars. We also have Rebecca Katrine Pallesen, who is a project manager at HD Lab and also at ContechLab. Rebecca was one of the driving forces in this project. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Peter Landau, program manager at TechMatch. Welcome. As I said, we're very happy and excited to have you with us today.
Yes, this is an amazing panel, I think, representation of capacity on this particular subject. And I would like to actually ask you to introduce yourself and maybe just reflect on why sensors can be important for digital construction, and maybe specifically on building sites, and whether you have seen any particular examples of this. So you were asked before, Peter, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah. So as you just said, I'm Peter. I work at BLOXHUB here, and I run this program called TechMatch. Should I just introduce shortly the TechMatch program?
Yeah, sure.
So we take a Danish SMV from the construction industry on the one hand, and then we have a EU tech startup on the other side. And these two companies we match together for 6 months and we put some funding in the machine to get everything running smoothly. And then the result will always be a prototype, a running prototype, a POC, so that we can prove that we can solve a challenge from this Danish company with this tech from the EU side. And quite often it's a tech transfer. It means it comes from another industry, and we bring it then into the construction industry. So I think that's for the first introduction. Yeah.
And you, Rebecca?
Yes, as said, I work in HD Lab, and what we do in HD Lab is try to take technology and then use it and help other stakeholders use it to become more sustainable and effective, and to have more productive and higher quality building sites and buildings in the future. And my focus is mainly sensors, and then it's technology related to sensors. And I think that might also answer your question a little bit about why sensors are important in the digital construction, because I don't really think the actual sensor is that important. It's more the data, and it's the context of where you put the sensor. So I think it's mainly if you need some kind of data on a related subject, and you have context to put it in, then you can actually use them meaningful. It doesn't give much value if you just put them up everywhere and don't do anything with it. So it's two things. It's sensors, and then it's a lot related technology.
So maybe it's wrong to just talk about sensors, but to focus more on the data. So what are your? I mean, do you have any examples of how this data can be beneficial to create sustainability?
Yeah, I think first of all, in order to tackle a problem, it's you need to know where you're at. It's very hard to see if you have progress and if you make changes if you don't know where you started. So first of all, I think you needed to kind of understand your own impact, and then as soon as you start looking at the data, you might identify places where you can improve. And when you have improved or when you have planned to improve, then you can benchmark against either your own situation or someone else. So you can actually see if you did change and if you're doing the right thing. And I think that's very important.
So knowledge is power to
Yeah.
create changes.
Definitely.
And Lars, you represent the NCC from your side as a contractor. How do you see this as or the beneficiaries of sensors on the building side?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really important tool to achieve some of new goals, but also solve actually problems we have right now. And I work with from a business development side, and both with construction sites, but also with data from buildings in operation, and then try, as Rebecca said, to tie the sensors and the data with the domain knowledge, because you have to do that to be able to drive action of some sort that makes a change. So that's kind of.
And that's something you have seen concrete examples of
with
NCC.
Yeah. We work very much with using sensors and data to live up to new sustainability metrics and work with lowering waste and energy consumption. And we've been working a lot with data-driven energy management, but also with worksite safety and worksite environment, like particulate matter in certain areas of the construction site. But also like having data for optimizing existing processes, like drying of building more efficiently and with less energy. And I would say one of the really interesting things is we have also been using sensors to try out, try to kind of put data and numbers into some of something like covering a construction site while doing construction. There's a lot of myths and a lot of things that have not been measured before, where sensors and platforms can actually give us some of the answers.
So they can be kind of a Swiss Army knife for solving not just challenges of sustainability, but many other challenges, and maybe things you haven't even thought about before.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So Kasper, tell us about SensoHive. What kind of company is that?
Yeah, so we are a couple of years into our journey. Our core competence is to put sensors in concrete and document the casting and the curing process for the contractor, so they know in real time what is the current concrete temperature, strength, humidity, and so on. So they can use that for pushing as fast as possible on their construction project.
And what kind of benefits does that have? What is there any kind of savings, or what is the potential here?
Yeah, I think maybe if I take, let's say, one step back on that question, I think for me, sensors has, let's say, two parts. One is that, we have been, like, in construction, you have been working with BIM and digital models for like 20 years or even longer, right? And you are actually in general quite good in that. But I think for me, sensors is a way to, connect the physical construction side with these digital BIM models. And having that data flow just gives a lot of opportunities. And let's say the second aspect of that, and I think that's where we are moving into our journey, is to actually take actions as Lars is saying, right? Can we start controlling stuff with the sensor data that we provide? And that's, let's say, the one step further in the creating like wisdom with the data, not just providing like a data or report or PDF, but actually start taking actions. And I think that's where we see the IoT and sensor journey is moving into right now. But I mean, that requires like reliable sensors, long battery lifetime, and a lot of other technologies, right, in order to do that.
Okay. So it sounds like it's a process also. You collect some data and then you maybe find some new applications for the data but it sounds like it's important to at least get moving on that journey and really to invest in that effort. So that kind of leads me to the next question. Why? It sounds like it's a very good business case. It's a very good idea to use to digitalize the building side. But it seems like companies like NCC and what you represent here is kind of also in the forefront. It's not something that's adapted by the whole sector. And why do you think that some organizations and companies are hesitant to move on this, Peter?
Yeah, well, I think it's, as you had to correct me, I think it's okay to say that the construction industry is quite conservative without offending anyone. And I think it's for good reasons, because there's a low margin when you have to make a construction. So you go full speed on the exact job that you have, and this we have to fulfill. So one of the barriers is this conservatism, but also to every barrier there's a solution. Then that's why I think, for instance, to do this kind of program that we run here with the funding and to support also our spend in the pilot project can overcome some of the conservative. And you can better say, Lars, well, guys, we have now this opportunity, and we even get paid for it. Let's go and do it. So, and for instance, we do this on not with NCC, but with the Enemerker and Petersen Trust. They now have sensors for emission. We have in 2025, we have to make documentation on emissions on our construction site, and they have to be emission free. And you know, how to handle this is difficult, but now with this kind of thing, we can move ahead in due time, and hopefully within 4 years, we can fulfill these kind of requirements. Yeah.
So emission-free in 2025. So that sounds like a burning platform to get moving. Maybe just to jump around, Lars, what do you think are some of the, because you also represent, I mean, some of the big players in the what do you think some of your competitors and like-minded organizations are hesitant to adapt this agenda?
I think it's completely correct that we are really conservative, and there's a lot of risks to be mitigated and handled, and sensors are not the answer for all of those problems, of course. But I also think the way we have been working with it is to maybe not take the most complicated thing you can do with sensors, but taking the low-hanging fruit approach, and actually showing and focusing on the short-term solutions where the people on the construction site that might only have a 2 or 3 year project. So we need to be able to change some decisions or change some actions on the short term, but at the same time collecting data for the long-term use cases, because they're there as well. But the good thing is there's a lot of new demands coming in that actually adds to the validity of the business case, saying it's not only about saving stuff, or it's also about documenting and living up to regulations that's going to be put into the business case. And at some point, and at least that's what we're talking about in NTC, that business cases are not only currency, but it's also kilos and tons of CO2. So it has to be looked at that way. And
so double or triple bottom lines. I think it's what we're looking at. But it sounds like also like that you mentioned the people at the building site, and I think that maybe you also have to persuade or make it accessible for the people implementing these kind of measures. Is that something you have any experience with, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think definitely it's a good point that the building site is along also with the organization and the decisions also a big factor, because I think if we look at other industries like where cars are getting manufactured or medicine is getting produced, it's very like streamlined and clean places, so it's pretty easy to put up sensors, and if they change the type of medicine they produce, they might just not change the whole setting. But in construction sites, we have a lot of other factors. It's the weather and the whole scale of it is just so different. So I think it's also fair to say that the technology needs to be able to work in these conditions. So that's also something that we need to look at to develop actual sensors that work in these conditions. Because I think if you take a building like this, I did a project a couple of years ago where we looked into the data from the sensors in this building, and I think there are thousands of sensors here. So it's not that we're not using sensors in the building industry. it's just that we're using it where it's a bit easier, maybe, and that is a bit easier if it's a building that's already done.
Yes, I mean, and building sites are messy and they're dirty and
Yes.
And complicated. And I think it also goes to your point, Peter, about engaging in these projects or these pilot projects and getting the sensors out to life. You can't really just construct them in a lab and then expect everything to be okay. You need to have this hands-on experience. I don't know if that's also your experience, Kasper.
I think, I mean, you learn a lot, right, by installing sensors. I mean, we came from installing sensors in another application, right? But when we started installing sensors in construction, I mean, we built it. I mean, literally like programmed the software and developed the hardware on site and in precast productions, right? So I think that gave us a huge benefit when it comes to the product now, that, you know, it's born out there. It's not born in a lab.
No.
And I think that comes down to, you know, what Lars said, you know, the low-hanging fruits are, you know, there's so many low-hanging fruits in my perspective in the construction industry, and you know, the numbers are insane. You know, looking at, you know, the amount of waste. I think like 30% of, I mean, there's different reports, right? But like some reports say it's like 30% of global waste comes from construction. Like 8% of like the global CO2 can be derived back to the concrete only. I think they're like, if you take like the whole construction, it's close to like 30% of all CO2 emissions you can trace back. So I mean, the numbers are insane, right? And I mean, right now we're just going for the very, very low-hanging fruits, also with our sensors. I remember we're on a Belgium construction site where we installed our sensors. They were able to go down to only having one formwork set, and even with that, we saved 5 weeks in the construction site, where they were able to move, you know, the cranes to new sites and the people to new sites and so on. So I mean, the numbers are insane.
So you, I mean, so you just, if you prove that business case, it should be very persuasive one for developers, because it saves time, it saves money, and it saves CO2, which is becoming a more important parameter. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was what we did like 3 years ago, making a super low, like practical solution about the concrete curing. And over the last 2.5 years, we have been more involved, I think, like close to 1,050 projects globally. And, you know, we can, like, this is, I mean, it's a low cost solution, right? So even in like projects in Cameroon or Togo, or I mean, we can, you know, it's still applicable, which you know, just for me makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. We just had a public sector panel at the conference, WDBE conference, discussing some of these, what the public sector can do, and now we just talked about this emission-free building sites in 2025. Is there anything that we can do in terms of regulation also to speed up this development or create more incentives? I don't. Just any of you who have a point on this?
Yeah, I will say that's exactly, we have to say that's what is needed, because the 2025, now that we know it, okay, now we start, it's in 2021. Last year we started up, for instance, this project here, and you have also done your projects, because we know that in 5 years' time we have to do it. So, of course, it's needed that we have regulations. And it's a positive thing, because we all want to do it, but we need this kind of initiatives, let's say positive initiatives to force the industry. So, and then in many creative ways, we also reach the goals, and that's amazing to see. Yeah.
I think what I hope that like the public sector can do is like also take, let's say, a slightly bigger responsibility in terms of pushing these new green construction sites. I mean, a good example is the new types of concrete that is coming, right, with like 30% less CO2 impact. I mean, of course, it costs a little bit more, right? Like, but I mean, it's the concrete cost is like a fraction of the total construction site. It's like a 1 or 2%, and I mean, I think the public sector should be able to take, you know, the responsibility and say, hey, you know, we need the new type of concrete to be used, and take that. I mean, right now everyone is taking their hands off the plate, right? Because, you know, who should pay for that? And I think that in these cases, right, I think there is a responsibility to take at least showcase it can work, right?
So in the few instances when there's a little bit of extra cost, or at least a little bit of extra investment, that there's not really a system for spreading that risk, or
exactly. I mean, we're talking about, you know, increasing maybe 10 or 20% of 1% of the total cost, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's a fraction, right?
Okay. And that leads me to the kind of as you also mentioned, the conservativeness of of the sector. What can we do about this? Do you have a view on this, Lars?
Basically, it's just showing the more concrete actions. Saying you need to we use data like this. It helps you like this, and you can act like this, and that's showing the way of simple things like energy management. It's a fairly simple case, and it also ties into other things we have to live up to. It's a fairly simple case to look not only at how much we spend, but when and for what, and then making small changes that is maybe not a big amount of kilowatt hours or CO2, but it actually works, and you can show it. And that's important to mitigate the conservatism. Taking really complicated stuff, saying we can fix this with something that requires a lot of domain knowledge and a lot of credibility building, I think, to be able to handle that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, you are also representing the technological innovation and working with different organizations within the sector. How do you feel you can improve your collaboration also with other organizations and help the whole sector become more open to innovation and digitalization?
I think it's a really good question, and if the answer was easy, then we would have done it by now.
Yeah.
But I think we need to work more together as an industry, and not just as someone taking part in different phases of the construction. I think people are reluctant to invest in new technologies if they don't see the value for them right there, right now on the site. So if someone outside in the construction site sees some new technology, if it's beneficial for the building owner in 20 years, then they might not see the incentives to invest in it. And of course, I can understand that, but I think if they are forced to work more together in the long perspective, then it might make more sense. So I think the use cases are super important. The good examples of where and when this can be beneficial. If everyone in the value chain can see that, then they might also be more able to agree on investing in it. I hope so, but I think we need to practice this.
So the value chain is too broken up.
It's definitely characterized by so many different phases and organizations.
And that's also, of course, a topic we are discussing a lot here in BLOXHUB and in all the organizations in Denmark. We're very focused on circular construction and how do we support circular construction. And one of the systemic barriers, of course, this broken up value chain that investments made are not necessarily benefiting the ones making the investment 25 years down the line. So I think that's a good point. So I'd like to ask you, where do you think this is going? I mean, you have started a journey now with some promising results and some very tangible benefits, a clear business model. But how far can we take this? I mean, what is the next step? What do you think, Kasper?
I think, I mean, if we talk like in general, like construction and technology, I hope what will happen is that what maybe we have seen with like fintech as an example, financial tech in the last 10 years, right? Which has really like grown also like 10 years ago, like conservative banks. I mean, that would probably have been a lot the same speeds as we had today, right? But it's like total new world today, right? In there, in that industry. And I think there is actually the potential of doing quite the same in the construction industry. It's an insane industry. And I think in general, I mean, the guys in the construction industry are kind, right? They are open actually also to discuss with you. You can call, maybe you can call NCC and get in touch with Lars, or maybe an assistant or someone else, right? But actually you can get time to speak, right? If you have something on the heart and you believe that there's you can do a change, right? So for me, I think there should be just a much more, focus on getting, startups into the construction space, 10 or 100 times the number of startups we have. there's space enough for that.
So more collaboration with startups and yeah, more innovation and investment.
I don't know I mean, I think the company is actually ready to work with the startups. I just think there is like so few to work with, in my opinion.
So we need more innovators. That's a good point.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lars? Are you?
I very much agree, and actually we have actually from the start taken the path of using packaging the use cases in smaller split up use cases and being able to use like SensoHive or other small startups that have a solution that goes really deep into something like concrete maturing or energy monitoring, and then if there's a higher purpose for NCC, then integrating that ourselves to build the value on top of that. But we should not spend a lot of time investing in building sensors or platforms and stuff like that. That's not my opinion, at least, and that's not the way we've been doing it. But I also think one of the things we've actually done at NCC is the case around energy management. We have actually done a management decision saying we're going to do this on projects above a certain amount, saying, well, this is standard to have data or to be data informed around consumption on the construction side, and then putting the hand on the boilerplate, saying we're going to follow up on these sites and make sure that we also help the projects gain the benefits from the sensors. Of course, we can't do it on all projects, but we have started with bigger projects because of that makes more sense. There's a lot higher potential.
Yes.
Yeah.
So taking responsibility throughout the organization also.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Peter? What do you think the future holds in terms of how far can we take this digitization?
Yeah, but that's the beauty of sensors, is that you can measure everything automatically. So we take a lot of burden out of, let's say, the human interaction with getting documentation or solving this and that. But the real thing is that it has to be challenge-driven. So the connection to the construction industry and to people like us trying to make innovation should be that we listen to the real challenges, not something that we believe, and then we find the solutions that are easy to implement. So it's because, like you said, this building has thousands of sensors, so much data that we do not know of and we do not use. Instead, we could have maybe 4 or 5 super dedicated sensors and the right dashboard to tell us what is going on here. So I think that's the real beauty of this. And also we see a lot of AI. So we have data, but we also have artificial intelligence to help us to get more insight to the data. So that's this also what we will see. And then we will see more evolution, like you now have a fantastic solution with the concrete, and SensoHive is now in a match trying to take these kind of data to the next level. So it's not only about applying completely new innovation, but also have an evolution of systems. So that's one of the trends, I think.
So not just taking data to BIM, but taking it to AI as well.
Yeah, and then also, what kind of data do we have, and can we use it for other purposes, like controlling heaters and dehumidifiers and super simple things. Maybe we save 20-30% of energy, and that's a lot of energy.
And what do you think HD Lab will focus on in the coming 5 years on this topic? What will be the next trend?
I think it's definitely the utilization of the data. Now we have the collection of the data. We know how to do that, but using it for something meaningful. And if that's a simple dashboard that can really help for people, or if it's combined with artificial intelligence to predict your next issue or risk of something, or automatic actions or something, that could be any of these. But I think it's definitely to use all the data that we have, but more meaningful.
Okay, so that will be the next big mountain to climb on innovation. To
yes.
I think it's also a
Data
design
mountain.
problem,
Yes.
right? How do we design the interface between data and the user. So I think that's an interesting point. But also coming back to sustainability, I think we have just this this demand for emission-free building sites. I think it will only go one way. We'll have more and more regulations. I think that digitization and sensors can be a very powerful tool in that. And if we look also forward towards regenerative cities and really cutting emissions, do you see any new applications on specifically on sustainability in the coming years?
I don't know if it's not a new application, but I think the changing towards using more electricity-driven machinery on construction sites, that's actually something that I thought a couple of years ago would take many more years to start doing. And now when I talk to some of the big stakeholders in the Danish building industry, they're very positive towards this, and I'm actually very surprised and happy to see that. There's a great attitude towards it, and it might seem more simple, but it's something that's going to make a big difference.
So is the technology ready for that?
It's becoming. I would say. I think you need to develop as you use it and implement it. But we have a lot of ready yellow machines that you can put on site and use. All right.
And do we need more collaboration, more partnerships across between public agencies and startups and corporates, or are we heading in the right direction there? What do you think, Lars?
I think it's good collaboration right now, and then good knowledge sharing as well. I think so.
I think what is also needed is that, for instance, now we have NCC, one of the biggest players in the Nordic region, is the front runner for this kind of thing. So, I mean, you take responsibility. And when we start telling the success stories of this, it gets so much easier to implement in other sites, in smaller construction sites and so on. So this is super, super important. And also that when we sell it, that we make it solution driven, so that we don't talk too much about tech and sensors, because we know it's there, but you really don't care. As long as you can fulfill the measures and the goals that you have. So also it's a lot about the communication around this.
I agree. And I think we also have a few comments from Umbrella, our digital platform. One says, "Good point. It's not just about construction industry to adopt new technologies, but also technologies to adopt the construction industry's challenging environment." I think that's a good way to put it. Actually technologies maybe can be more easily adapted on other sectors. That is a bit of a conservative sector. So I think so maybe we have to look at the sector and how we collaborate and value chains and so on. One other says, "Work more together. The use cases are super important. We need more innovation and more startups. The companies are ready." But how do we get more of these companies, Kasper?
It's a good question, right? I mean, it's a task for Realdania and BLOXHUB, and you know, maybe also like for investors, right? Pushing for that. I've also seen very good examples on actually general contractors. You know, I mean, they can sit there and wait until something comes, right? But they can actually also participate in the environment themselves, right? So I mean, we have Dutch, Belgium contractors, Norwegian contractors. They're actually making their own venture funds, accelerator programs, investing in startups. I mean, that's quite an interesting journey that's some of the biggest contractors doing that. I remember 2 years ago we participated with Bessex, the biggest Belgium contractor. They made like this, accelerator program where they invited, a lot of startups in there, but it was not just for them, right? They actually said, hey, we do like a demo day for all in Belgium. So they invited all their competitors in, everyone in one single room, one big building, showcasing everything. So they were like, hey, we need to invest into the ecosystem. So they were taking like a quite interesting, and they also had their own venture fund investing in some of the startups. So I think that's quite interesting to see.
That's interesting, and it's another way of sort of working across or in the sector. Rebecca, what do you think to become the next booming industry? What do we need? Do you think this kind of behavior by large corporates could be interesting?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think also, again, with inspiration from other sectors, I've spent quite some time the last couple of years working with blockchain solutions and trying to figure out if we could do something in the construction technology with that. And I think actually where you see that the solutions within in blockchain for the most value is when a lot of companies across sectors or across different organizations work together to create something. One of the examples is TradeLens, which is in the shipping industry, and that's actually a joint venture of a lot of different companies, and they all have value from that because it makes everyone's lives much easier. So if we could put our guards down in the construction technology or industry to work together, I think we could definitely, everyone could value from that instead of sitting in separated camps and not sharing anything with each other.
All right. Very good. We're about to finish now, but as a kind of a conclusion, maybe I would like you all to if we have some audience out there who's thinking this is interesting in the building sector, they want to get started. Where do you think they should start? What would be the first step? What do you think, Peter?
Ooh. I think I have to think about that one first. So maybe you start, please.
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Yes.
But again, finding it's really hard, but finding simple, dedicated use case where you can solve something in a simple way.
So
that's fairly cheap, and also tie into like efficiency and emissions and stuff like that.
So the low-hanging fruits.
Absolutely.
And could it also be like finding the right business case, or
I think it's
maybe isolating?
I mean, now I just 3 weeks ago I participated in the Danish Concrete Association meeting, and I think what's on all topics also globally when I talk with big contractors is like sustainability. I mean that is a thing, right? Everywhere all key management are measured on that. Actually companies are starting to compete. I remember Thomas Concrete, they announced, hey, we're going to make the first electrical concrete truck in the Nordic, but then a Danish truck or the concrete supplier came faster.
Yeah.
So I mean we've started to see these competitions, right? So you definitely have to have a leg in the sustainability part. But when this is said, I mean sustainability is not enough. I mean you have to make a good business case, and not just by 1% better. I mean you have to make it at least as cheap as as a current solution, or maybe even like 10-20% cheaper. I mean, so you have to combine the very good business case with a sustainable solution. I mean that's the two things you have to combine.
And maybe also combine, like you've done in TechMatch, some different types of companies with other companies that have the right technology, right?
Yeah, and that's so that we don't have to invent everything from the very beginning. So that's also why I do not know exactly who's watching here, but if they come from other industries than the construction industry, I mean, please look at the construction industry to see if this is something for you, because many of the solutions are already out there, and we can see with a little twist, a little twerk, then you can actually use it here. And I would say, please have focus on CO2, please, because we can do many things, but we have to be even more creative when it comes to checking out CO2 from construction industry. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a point, Rebecca? Or
I think it's a very good point. I like the idea of using sustainability as a way to get out in the world, but then focusing on one minor problem, if you could say. So you have an easy story to tell, saying it's this problem that we fix, and we fix it this way. And then I think also we in ContechLab are working on so many different projects in this very specific project period where we get into another simple case and then we work on it. So I think also if if people are having great ideas, try to reach out to concepts like that and to get a boost to get going. I think we are definitely always open to people reaching out to us and wanting to collaborate and help each other.
Thank you, and that's actually a good segue to ending this session, because I think this is also the message from both BLOXHUB and ContechLab that we're open to collaboration and open to new ideas and new types of partnerships on construction sites or other part of the construction industry. So we will see you again. Me and Christina will see you again tomorrow, where we will be hosting the morning session. We're really looking forward to it. Thank you for participating today. Thank you to the fantastic panel for all your insights and all your ideas. And have a nice continued conference at the WDBE. Thank you.